All right, here we be, the Three Musketeers of Akasaka. Some of us are drinking
All right, here.
red wine, except he's drinking his ginger ale.
Ginger, I'm not drinking tonight.
Due to the fact that he had no sleep and
Because I'm a God-fearing man.
right.
I don't drink them alcohol.
All right, Dallas, you're going to introduce the next topic then, right?
Okay. The influence of technology and especially like social systems that have been developed around technology.
Okay, by the way, this is Sam. He's a
Hey guys.
newcomer to Philozovee, but a quite intelligent boy.
Welcome, Sam.
And fortunately, he's had some experience in technology, which is our topic. So,
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
you want to start?
Well, no. This is it's not really focused on the technology, but what I would like to discuss is the influence of social-based systems developed, of course, on technology, on modern social interaction. How is social interaction different now that we have these social networks and whatnot? Perception, perhaps. The influence, I mean, the ability to, I mean, when we have direct personal interaction, and I can only influence your perception of me to the degree, through which I have projected myself through my own speech or whatnot, but through these social networking systems, people have sort of, I guess you could say painted rosier pictures of their lives. Not in the case of Phil, of course, but a lot of people tend to overemphasize success or happiness or family or things like this, but in reality, they may not be in such a state. And actually, I have read some studies that the vast majority of people believe that the stories other people are presenting on these social network systems are bullshit to a large degree.
Right, but people have always attempted to micromanage their image.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago, they did the very same thing. It's just that we're using the tools available to us to try to paint a more realistic picture of ourselves. But it's becoming harder to do, in my opinion, since cameras are everywhere and everyone is liable to be caught unaware in some strange pose or situation that
Unbecoming
and unflattering, and so I don't think trying to micromanage your image is anything new.
Now,
I thought the main point about this was actually about image, so I was surprised that Phil brought it up. Image is usually the way you speak, the way you stand, the way you hold yourself, and the way you dress, like in the car you drive. But in the last decade now, it's your Facebook page is an extension of your image.
Yeah.
So people go through various different lengths to portray a very good image online, and it kind of becomes part of their image. And what Phil also mentioned, how it's hard to control because the ubiquity of cameras and so on. But that's kind of an escalating arms race between the ubiquity of social media and privacy concerns and so on. Because every time someone gets caught, then there's new privacy feature that comes up. So I think, we haven't seen the end of this, the influence between social interaction and technology. It's going to be a continuing type of arms race.
so let's take this to the next progression of the information that's being stored in these systems now is being perceived as immutable, in the sense that it's unchanging, it's stored, it's always going to be available. Whereas people in previous times, they may have had information about them that was stored, but it wasn't as readily available or accessible through the existing systems at the time. So how do you think that influences people's decisions or influences the lifestyle decisions that people make, or do you think that that influences that decision-making process in any way? Do people conscientiously think, or do they ponder the fact that, okay, well, everything that I say and everything that I do now is going to be, immortalized, and therefore I should do my best to ensure the image that is imprinted on those systems of me is the absolute best representation possible of who I am. Do you think that in a sense society has or will become better because individuals are now in a sense being held more accountable for their own decisions and the effects that they have on other people because of this fear of those things being immortalized?
I think you see that kind of happening in both ways. I mean, technology is always an amplifier. So people who are really conscious about it think about it even more. People who want to be kind of exhibitionists, and I don't mean that in a pervert way, but just kind of want to put themselves out there, they can do it 1,000 times more now. People who want to be shut in, they can be even more shut in. So it works both ways. When it comes to the data, though, it's not that it's immutable, but it certainly is permanent, or it's seen as permanent. Like you can't just delete the files and it's going to be gone. If it's online, it's archived
Replicated
somewhere.
everywhere.
It's
Yeah.
replicated. It's always going to be available. You can always claim like, oh, that was photoshopped, or whatever. So it's the immutability is not necessarily an absolute attribute about it.
I read one study where there was they claimed there was a casualization of image, whereas employers now expect everyone to have another side of the personality.
Yeah.
Since everyone is able to be scrutinized these days, more people are accepting the fact that people have more than one life, more than one face, more than one image, and it's no longer a stigma to have a crazy side of your personality come out.
So let me ask you, there are a number of, or progressively, there are a number of organizations that will discriminate against an individual if they aren't partaking in these social systems, because they believe that it's the social system that provides the transparency necessary for them to make an appropriate, determination as to their what's the word I look for? As to their there's a word. You can of course cut this out, but as to the not, it's like hireable is the word, but there's another word for it. What is it?
Hireability. I mean,
Yeah.
Appropriate, like how appropriate they are.
Yeah.
For how they fit in.
Yeah. Or as to the hireability of the individual, do you think it's appropriate for these organizations to discriminate on those terms, considering the fact that most individuals are already augmenting perception through the very systems they're trying to use to determine the hireability of some individual?
Yeah, I think, if I was in, okay, well, first of all, I don't think that there should be any laws preventing that necessarily. I mean, some people might argue that, but let's assume for the moment that there isn't any privacy laws that prevent corporations from doing that. I think it would actually be a kind of an ignorant perspective to think that you can judge a person based on what their online persona is. Because there's all sorts of ways. There's no real transparency either. There's only transparency for what they put out. And if they know how to control their privacy settings, or they know how to be discreet, for example, then they'll be perfectly able to hide what they want to hide. So you never actually really get a perfect picture. However, with that being said, the flip side of that is that it's kind of the same argument about writing a test. Like writing the SAT. You can score high maybe once, and then maybe you're judged the rest of your life on that. But if you'd have written the test, maybe you just wrote it badly that day, maybe you're tired, whatever. But it's kind of the same thing. it's not an accurate representation. It's not a perfect model, but it's helpful. And for some people, they might be able to gain some valuable intelligence, some valuable information out of it.
So, but what if an organization, as a prerequisite or in the hiring process, they tell you that you have to allow them access, through befriending them or whatever, to your work, and they have to have visibility or they have to have insight into that aspect of the information that you make available.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments too is that they can also determine, for example, if I'm a salesman and I go into an interview, of course, well, let's say you go in telling them that you have connections that you might not have. Well, one way that you could test that, or test what they're saying, is by going into their LinkedIn account and seeing if in fact they are connected to those individuals. Do you think that's a legitimate?
If it's publicly accessible, then the guy supposedly already agreed to it. He already
But what if
consented.
it's private?
Okay, yeah, that's the most interesting.
Yeah.
There's actually a precedent for that in the province of Ontario, where I think it was a girl tried to sue a company because they forced her to give her password or something, or they forced her to actually type her password, and then they browsed through her Facebook profile.
Okay.
I personally think that they should not punish the corporation. Not that the government should not, but if they would say that to me, I'd be like, well, I don't want to work for this kind of company then.
Yeah.
I think it's always your own personal choice. And then, you broadcast that. You broadcast the message. You put the message out there. By the way, this corporation really wants to dig into your personal life. Do you really want that?
Right.
And then, basically, they would have to, they would have some blowback type thing. I think that's the real punishment. Not that they regulate some law about it. So yeah, you got to make the distinction between what's private and public.
If you don't have legal intervention, I mean, if you don't have government intervention into that, then you could have personally suffered injury, financially or whatever, if you were employed by that organization, and later on they asked you to give you your password, and you refused, and they fired you. Well, then you've lost employment, you've lost income. That's a direct impact on your life. So how does justice served in that scenario?
Well, the labor code would go against that. I mean, you can't fire someone for refusing to give you their password. I mean, that just wouldn't fly. They would have to. I mean, if that would go to court, I mean, the corporation would have to pay.
Yes, of course.
I mean, they could. I don't know what the penalty would be, but it'd be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Stop it.